Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today is Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you.
Happy rainy Tuesday, Dr. Paul.
It is sort of rainy.
It's a little gloomy.
Even our 4th was a little rainy, too.
Yeah, a little
but if
gloomy.
you look at all the details, you can find out the reason you might call it a rainy day, too. But actually, not too bad, not too bad. There's been worse 1st of the Julys, I guess. But I wanted to talk about what's going on in the 4th of July excitement on what's happening in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Maybe they're having a declaration of independence. Maybe they're forever going to be independent again after 4,000 years. They'll get their independence. But somebody else will come along. That is, if we really leave there. But the news was that, Biden had talked about leaving, Trump had talked about leaving. But most of the time when presidents talk about leaving and they feel the public pressure, they always have a loophole. But right now, I don't know what the big loophole is. It's just that, can you trust politicians to do what they say? But anyway, it isn't just another plan. All of a sudden, it looks like Bagram Air Base was closed down. They were out.
Yeah.
And it was so sudden and quick that our government didn't notify the government that's taking over, and it was just gone. But nevertheless, it sort of reminded me, maybe they listened to one of my speeches a long time ago. We just marched in there. Why don't we just march out? It looks like you did.
Did, yeah.
But we will keep our fingers crossed, because we have learned that sometimes there will be secret things going on, or other plans, or conditions will change tomorrow. All you have to do is have one sudden episode of violence, and the American people will scream to go back in. But usually the American people don't scream for war unless they're prompted to do so. The military-industrial complex and the media, they have to get people riled up before they say, let's all go to war again. But anyway, I'm glad the troops are coming home. And the surprise is okay, but somebody will try to make something of it. I'm sure and let's say he does have a sincere bone in his body that he'd like to get out of there and take a little credit for. He might be doing for it, and he didn't want to make too big of an announcement to get the military-industrial complex and the neocons all riled up. So who knows what will happen? But I bet you within weeks we'll hear some other news about what's going on in Afghanistan.
Yeah, and let's put up that first clip, because it just shows us how dramatic it is that literally in the middle of the night, the U.S. had occupied this base for 20 years. It was the symbol of the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan, a massive air base. They just simply walked out, they switched off the lights, they took the keys to the cars that they left, and I don't have a picture of it, but they left many, many vehicles behind. They didn't tell the commander who took over. They just disappeared. So this guy woke up and he looked around. He's in charge. And I think, it's kind of funny and it's kind of weird. But when you stop and think about it, a couple of things cross the mind. The first of all is that for operational security reasons, it makes all the sense in the world. And you were saying before the show, Dr. Paul, that if you announce, hey, we're leaving in 5 days, or 30 days, what have you, then you're opening up to all sorts of problems that can happen in the meantime. So for that reason, it makes sense to do it. But the other thing that strikes me is that this is going to be used, the unusualness of it, which does make sense, will be used to bash Biden. He's doing this, and I think it's a good thing, and it should be praised. But you're going to see the wailing and gnashing of teeth in Washington, D.C. over this. And you said before the show, too, from both parties who are both wedded to the military-industrial complex, they are not going to like what they see.
Now, that's right. It's some people have compared a little bit to our final departure from Saigon, but it's quite a bit different than that. I would think the troops seem to be pretty quiet about here, but the troops, and certainly the American people, were very, very excited about leaving Saigon, even though that was a tragic ending to a tragic war for a lot of people. But right now, but the whole thing is when we have bits and pieces that make sense with a philosophy of maybe our policy should shift a little bit, then we get more excited than we should.
Yeah.
But we should point it out and not say that our purpose is to bash, Biden, no matter what. There's enough other people doing that. Just like the whole issue for Trump, there were some things on foreign policy we didn't like, and yet there were times when he said and did some things that were very good. One thing Trump. The body bags didn't increase. And that's usually some type of a symbol of what's going on. And certainly, look at what happened under George W. Bush, and look at what happened under Johnson and Nixon and all these people, and Obama too. So, but of course, our goal is to change people's opinion about our role in the world, and they say yes. Our role in the world is to be the kingmaker. It is our empire.
Well, and you wrote about this in your column this week. The two potentially problem areas are this announcement that we're going to keep 1,000 troops, up to 1,000 troops in the embassy as a military command. That seems like a really dumb idea. The Taliban have said we don't like this idea. We're going to consider them targets. Why would you put, as you said so well, why would you put a target on the back of what is a diplomatic post and turn it into a military post? Hey, come shoot us. Dumb. The other thing is using either U.S. troops, or even talk about using Turkish or Hungarian troops to guard the airport, to keep the airport open. And that seems also like a dumb and dangerous idea. I think those hopefully will fade away as reality sinks in. The Taliban has said, hey, we don't really care about taking Kabul. So, go ahead and do what you're going to do. But they are taking the rest of the country, as you noted, very, very quickly and very rapidly.
And of course, I think that's an important issue about the embassy. Think about how significant the in Iran's their embassy. I mean, that happened in '79, and it's still an incident.
Yeah.
Of course, us marching in there and participating in a coup way back in '53, that was a significant event too. Which I imagine you can't find 5 people out of 100. Average Americans who would know about it or care about it or understand the significance of 1953.
Yeah, the same people that are screaming, oh my gosh, look what's happening now that we've left. This just shows we should never have left. No, it shows that we should never have gone in.
There you go.
So I think we want to move on to our next topic quickly. And that is something that our good friend Thomas Massie, who of course is on the board of the Ron Paul Institute, he's doing something about this problem. And I think we have a clip. What's that next clip? This is Massie. Now he's talking about an Army Times report saying that come September, the military might be forcing this experimental, which by then may be passed by the FDA, this vaccine on people, including military personnel. And Massie says, I've been contacted by members of our voluntary military who say they will quit if the COVID vaccine is mandated. And so he took action. He introduced H.R. 3860 to prohibit any mandatory requirement that a member of the armed forces receive a vaccination against COVID-19. He has 24 sponsors so far. People interested in this might want to contact the representatives and encourage them to support this. But he took a little bit of guff when he did this. Oh, you can't quit the Army, you can't quit the military. Technically true. But he also reminded us of what happened, Dr. Paul, with the anthrax debacle. And I'd remembered that, but he actually pointed out, and let's do this next clip really quick, because he reminds us what happens. Yeah, you can't just quit. It's not like a regular job when you're in the military, but let's put that next one. Here he is. Don't repeat the anthrax vaccine debacle. And he cites an article from 2001 on CNN. A General Accounting Office report released in October found that as many as 25% of the pilots and aircrew members leaving the military or seeking transfers were leaving because of the vaccination program, the anthrax. Remember, that was an absolute debacle. It was a terrible vaccine. It made them all sick.
And I'm sure they talk a lot about it, and they read the same headlines we read about. And, just the reports to the CDC, they say there's 400,000 that have made at least reports about accidents happening and complications coming from the vaccine. So the real irony that I find in this is we always hear about the dedication, Fourth of July, all this militarism that you're doing the Lord's work, you're saving us, you're preserving our freedoms and our Constitution by going to an unconstitutional war,
Yeah.
something that has nothing to do with our national defense, and then violating civil liberties. So we gather up these young people and send them over, and they're hesitant and they don't want it, and there's no proof that they can't be a soldier without the vaccine. Everybody else is backing away from it. So they they say that you have to you have to take this shot. And the whole thing is that if they don't take it, it's not really going to hurt anything. But they're insisting that they take this, and I just think that they go and they have their personal liberties violated, going over there saving our freedoms.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration, of course, when they talk about the military. I have a little bit of credibility in saying that. I was in the military for 5 years, and I never had a sense of watching and seeing people that all of a sudden they're dedicating to saving somebody's constitutional rights. And that was back when a draft was going on. That was certainly a violation. And they haven't eliminated the possibility of a draft coming back. Anyway, anytime that we accept the notion of hostilities around the world and an empire, I think there's always a threat. So this is maybe not doing exactly what a draft would do, but it's controlling people's personal lives and their health habits to a degree which is not exactly consistent with how a free society would operate.
And Massey makes a point, and he's made this consistently, that people that are mandating this don't understand basic science. A lot of these guys and gals in the military have had COVID-19. They've gotten over it. They didn't get sick because for the most part, they're young and healthy by definition to be in the military. So it's this one size fits all. Okay, we don't care if you've had it and you're immune to it and you can't get it again. You still got to get the shot. And people say, well, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. And the other issue is the Department of Defense did a study in late June, late last month, that found that a higher number than expected of military personnel who took the shot got the heart inflammation that we've been talking about, higher than expected, and that tracks along with what's happened in the general population when the CDC had to have basically an emergency meeting saying what's happening. We're seeing a lot of this heart inflammation. It's a big problem, and as you said in the show last week, it's not just you get a little inflamed and then it goes away. You actually can damage the heart.
It's something. One article was sort of cynical about this whole thing about, oh, they're having success. But I've talked about that for a long time, because the people who are looking for chaos and anger and frustration and the breakdown of our society, and that's the group that is supported strongly by one particular political party, and that is to support the whole woke movement and the whole cultural Marxist movement. This is what they look for. So if it was so hard for me to accept that, but I cannot just ignore it, that when normal people look at some of this, they say they're all crazy. What are they doing? And they are probably crazy, and they don't know what they're doing, except they do know what they're doing. The leaders know what they want to do and what their game is, because Marxism has been, they've been pretty clear on, they are a philosophic group, and if you have to look for something, they're probably a lot more consistent than the interventionists and the people that generally run both political parties, and they just go along.
Yeah. Well, you made an important point earlier that should really be underscored, which is if you support the troops, you should also support them in resisting unnecessary medical, having medical things forced on them. That's a way to support the troops. We're going to skip into our third one, I think.
Okay.
We're going to do a quicker show maybe today. We'll see what happens. But this is something interesting, and we don't know all of the facts about this, but we know what was claimed, and enough was claimed that makes us scratch our head, because it dovetails with what we've been seeing. We saw General Milley before Congress, was it last week or a week or so ago, where he talked about being woke, the woke military. He talked about, what was it, white rage and all this nonsense. Here's something that Matt Walsh tweeted in. It was picked up elsewhere. If we could look at this next clip. A woman whose husband is active duty Navy sent me this. His command held a, quote, diversity hike in honor of Pride Month. Attendance was mandatory. They hiked while waving a rainbow American flag, not a regular flag. Now the question is, this person claimed it was mandatory. We don't know if it was mandatory. Certainly if they were off duty, they can march however they wish, but still it is an issue, and it's another example, if it was mandatory especially, of something very strange happening in the military.
Well, it sounded like this was pretty much mandatory,
Yeah.
and even though we read this a day or so before the 4th of July, it is in the 4th of July spirit.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, freedom and liberty, and you will be marching in this parade. Now, the one thing they mentioned, of course, this is just an accident. They didn't have the American flag,
Yeah, yeah.
but they had the LGBT flag.
Yeah, of course.
They were required to carry that. So that is so strange. So I see first that it's the wokeism that is driving this, and that is the cultural Marxists. And at the same time, getting rid of the flag makes it international, and you
Yeah.
know these movements, and that's exactly what the radical Marxists want. They do want it to be international. You know, we've a libertarian argument that if and in our early history, people were allowed to have voluntary socialism. They could go and have their communities and set them up. As a matter of fact, the very first settlement at Plymouth
Yeah.
it was a voluntary socialist economy, and it didn't work very well. So this is something that they can do if they want, but don't force people to do it because it's not going to work. And this whole thing about you can't have the American flag. Not the American flag is going to save us
Yeah.
from all harm and death, but the other flag is not going to save us either. But what happens if you say something like this? And that is, this is Pride Month. This is what you do if aren't you a patriotic American? Don't you believe in freedom? I mean, it's pretty bad. That's why it can be simplified. I simplified all this trashy talk about how everybody's going to be treated fairly is make it very simple. Have a voluntary society. Two people want to do things together or apart. Just do it voluntarily,
Yeah.
no force, and that does solve all the problems. You can have contracts and whatever. It is not a complicated thing, except the people who are more ambitious and so anxious to have power are willing to do whatever they can to get in power, and they look like they're the government, and they look like they're the people. They are the government,
Yeah.
but they aren't the people, and the people become lackadaisical and they go along with it, and
Yeah.
and that's where we are. That's why I'm more optimistic than some people think I should be, is because I still think the people are still pretty good.
Yeah.
And but they just need to be stirred up because we already have seen that when things get really bad, the people will. You know, like the end of the Vietnam War, it really got bad, and finally the people said no more, and locked on. It's ending because the people got sick and tired of it, and I think it was the people, not so much in the U.S., but when the Soviet system collapsed, the people just got tired of it. They were broke and they walked away from it. It was sort of like, like we've done in Kabul. Just walk away
walk
from
away.
it, and it's not a bad habit to have when you, because the one thing for sure, I've come to the conclusion you can't argue and shouldn't argue in a serious manner with the Marxists. They don't even believe in truth, and they don't believe in reality, so why should they listen to you? I think that's different than talking to an honest progressive who really is good at heart and just probably hasn't been exposed to von Mises and a few other things. So they go along there. That's where we should work our coalitions, try to influence people. But right now, I tell you what, there's some really, really terrible people who are running our country.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Well, here's something from the website of this battalion. This is the 303rd Construction Battalion Maintenance Unit, and they do announce on their official Facebook page, that they're having this Pride hike, family friendly, it says, Pride hike. So we'll see. But it is consistent with what we saw last month, Dr. Paul, which is put that next one on if you can. remember this. U.S. Air Force Base says drag queen show was, quote, essential for morale. Air Force Base put on a show of men dressed as women. We'll see about that, if it's essential for morale. I just wonder what it's doing to morale to do
You
this.
know, I was thinking you could compare that to what Bob Hope did during World
That's
War
true.
II.
Yeah, no, that's true.
The Bob Hope shows, I mean, who knows what all the details are, but you know, the image was certainly a little
Yeah.
bit different than a drag queen.
Yeah.
Well, he was funny too.
Yeah, it was funny. Well, I'm going to close out with some good news, actually, Dr. Paul. And let's look at that next slide, because this is the good news, the next clip. The War on Us, Ron Paul Institute, Dulles Airport Marriott, September 4th, 2021. Tickets are on sale now. Go to ronpaulinstitute.org. Click on this picture that you'll see on the front page and get the tickets. And Dr. Paul, I have some good news about this, and I'm really pleased. But as you know, this conference is about the attacks on our civil liberties. And it's about COVID, but it's also about this whole domestic extremism nonsense that they're pushing as a pre-crime. It's about all of this, and we're going to have some great speakers. Judge Napolitano, Ron Paul, Gerald Celente, Jeff Deist, Gary Haven, our good friend, and a few more that we're going to announce. But I went back and I looked because I wanted to look at the analytics of ticket sales of previous conferences. This will be our 5th, and we're glad to be back after a year of absence forced by COVID. But it turns out in just 2 days of ticket sales being open, we sold more tickets than the last time it took us a month to sell. So we sold more in 2 days than it took us a month to sell. We're getting close to selling out almost half of these tickets. I think all the seats will be taken, and I want to encourage all of our friends and viewers who want to go to this conference in Washington, D.C., get your tickets soon, because when they sell out, the room is at capacity. There's nothing we can do, and I hate every year I have to turn people away, and I don't want to do that.
Do you think we should maybe think that we're getting more popular, or could it be that the country's just deteriorating more? And
I'll take whatever one.
And they're desperate.
Yeah.
We've got to listen to somebody else other than what we're getting on here. No, I think that's very good news, because I know you worry and concerned, because I've been able to. Okay, Daniel, if that's what we're going to do, go ahead.
Go
we can
for
do
it.
it. But you know, I think it's something that I'm always concerned about, and your news is good for me too, because a lot of people give me credit when I don't necessarily think I deserve the credit. And I said, it's good that you give me credit, but just the fact that you're interested in the same thing, and you want to see that it's the whole idea that people are frustrated, and they do know enough about us now that we come from a certain position, and they're going to help me remain with that optimistic streak, where there's a lot of people who are still interested. We need to grow the remnant, and the remnant, I think, is growing. And when I think back into the 70s, when I first got involved in all, people never had heard of the Austrian school, or not that many anyway. That has been you know, so different. I remember the first few months I was there, they said, why you want to talk about the Federal Reserve? Nobody talks about the Federal Reserve, but a lot more people talk about it now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of whispering going on. Oh, whoa, what in thunder's happening here?
Yeah.
So no, I think in the educational sphere, the awareness is growing, and people still worry. Yes, Ron, but you don't talk to them. The numbers aren't with you. The numbers are overwhelmingly, against, but the propagandists are more numerous. We've allowed, just like I mentioned a minute ago, that we've allowed the aggressive leaders to get into our position of power, because, of course, it's not easy to get libertarians, fortunately, to want to be in positions of power. We want to dissipate the power.
yeah.
So that's a little bit more of a challenge. And the only way I see that is trying to educate people and explain to them why they're better off in a free society. But they have to understand what a free society is really really about. That they know different. A lot of people say, "Oh well, I'm with you. I'm for sound money," but they don't have the vaguest idea what they're talking. Oh yeah, I don't like going to these wars either. I like this non-intervention stuff, except when except when the lobbyists come and say, if you want your donations this year, believe me, you better vote for this bill. And notoriously, those military bills have always been passed overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
So it's a system that we're challenging as well. But the news you give me today, I think is good news, and we're going to stay in business for a little while longer.
Well, let's hope so. By the way, the one thing about these events that really abides by the Ron Paul rule, which is we have fun. We learn something, we get together, but we also enjoy each other's company and have fun.
Sounds good to me. So, well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I hope everybody had a happy 4th of July. I hope that you were still able to think about what freedom really is all about, and not the commercialism that comes along with it or the unnecessary militarism. The military does not symbolize liberty. It doesn't mean that I'm an anarchist and I don't believe in defending this country, but it also means that I don't want to put that on a pedestal and say that is the main reason why a government exists, is in order to build an empire. The truth is, the militarism comes with special interest government and those who do believe in empire, and they feel very proud about it. You can still have an empire, in quotes, and that is an influence in the world, a voluntary group of people coming together. And there was a little bit of that spirit right after our revolution. And there's no reason why you can't have a voluntary number of people and countries and groups coming together for the defense of liberty and understanding it. And you can still do that and be patriotic. And I think that's what we should strive for. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.